Okay, I want to I want to make this video because I'm going to edit this. So if you don't see in the description what I am bringing up in this video, check back. I'm even going to allow some of you to see where I've archived some of this. Very few of you, and it's going to last for a very short while, this invite. A lot of you who are Antifa, who you think you're doing something incredibly good, and that it's so good that nobody, that can't be seen as wrong or anything like that, and so nobody's stopping you from assaulting people, because that's what you're doing. You just assault people and threaten people and terrorize people. Well, because of something that was very good that just happened to me, I really had to sit back and think, like, no animosity, because you can't know this. You could not know this unless you're somebody like me that really had an interest in this topic and then did the respective research. Most of you don't understand that the information that came out in a Freedom of Information Act, so this is getting real documents, source documents. A lot of you that this is going to be so above most of your heads because you're not there. Source documents that show Planned Parenthood and abortion clinics and stuff like that this is a for-profit industry. At some point they have to take profits. Yeah, a lot of you don't get that nonprofits that offer significantly important services have to take profits. Because many of you were not old enough to remember, there was a period of time that the AIDS HIV activist community, so because I'm from San Francisco, I was there. I was a data entry person doing for a nonprofit the data entry that was coming from Planned Parenthood for the state. So I got to be around gay people who were activists for health in the gay community. A lot of you don't know that there was for years, all through the 90s, with activists who they were pro-gay as pro-gay can get, that they insisted there was something funny about the fact that AIDS just exploded specifically in the gay community at a very specific time in the United States and then spread everywhere. And you'll just say this is some conspiracy, I'm making it up. It's because you're not there. You don't know. You don't believe in people having more experience and knowledge than you because it's how you were raised as mostly millennials, and Gens and Zoomers, and that you're violent people. So you're not really there. But there's going to be one or two or three of you who will be like, yeah, I've heard about this. There wasn't any conspiracy theory. This really does seem to indicate there was really serious indications that experimentation on vaccines that were then doled out in New York specifically in Soho, if I remember right, that there was something about feline experiments on cats, and that this then, because they found that cats have HIV, that they have some kind of immunovirus that is very similar to AIDS HIV. And so there was basically these people saying, what is this about? So it was that there has always been a portion of the gay community that said there was fundamentally at some point a way of coming up with a polio vaccine, improving upon it, and that a part of the experiment was doing this in the gay community. And it spread some type of it spread some kind of disease that becomes the human immunovirus, the HIV. And this died. Now, who was supposed to look into this? A man named Dr. Fauci. He was supposed to be in charge of keeping AIDS, HIV from spreading all over the world. AIDS, HIV spread all over the world within 20 years and devastating specifically Africa, populations in Africa. And so there was then also study that the Republicans were mad about studies done on African truckers. And it was because truckers are notorious for hiring prostitutes. They could go to and fro all over Africa, bringing loads here and there, and that this was cited as how a very large portion of infections to women were actually happening. That these were populations too far apart, because Africa, remember, the United States can fit into Africa, onto the African continent, like 5 times. So how did it spread so far so fast? And that because none of you will go to this point, if you were a Cobra Commander and you wanted to just do horrible things, if you were a supervillain, you have to start thinking like not just the villains you are, but real supervillains. If you were truly the you were the ultra fash. You wanted the complete merger of corporation and state, and that to do so you have to cause panics and deaths, and only when people panic and are like, what do we do, and that you could then offer a solution. Put people in camps, discriminate against large portions of your population, panic, do whatever you can that the political leadership says will solve the problem now, as quickly as possible. And because people like panic, like you all love, like Dead Kennedys wrote the song Riot, tomorrow you're homeless, but tonight it's a blast. Well, none of you also are Dead Kennedys fans. Like, you're not real punk rockers, really. You're not like the real thing, because you're not there. You don't have experience, you don't have knowledge. So you don't really realize that Jello Biafra told you all that what you would one day experience is the government flu. It's a song, Government Flu. Look up Dead Kennedys, Government Flu. Look up the lyrics. You don't know because punk rockers now don't cover old punk songs because they're just not good anymore. They're not good they're not good at it anymore. Well, you don't consider really why the FBI doesn't come after you, why the DOJ seems to just not be able to rope you in. The DOJ can seem to find all sorts of people who were at the Capitol, but the DOJ can't find anyone who was rioting at the White House. The DOJ can't find anybody with all the security cameras who was burning stuff down, assaulting people all throughout New York, Washington, D.C., Atlanta. Nobody can, they just can't do it. They're just, it's just so difficult. You have masks and all this stuff. So you don't really realize there's a reason why even the Rolling Stone ran an article about the super awesome queer Antifa who were helping the Kurds in the Middle East. And they never got busted for fighting with a foreign army. That's totally illegal. It's a felony to fight with a foreign army. And they're fighting against a sovereign government, the Syrian government. You never consider why the DOJ has never busted these people. The DOJ busted all of those ultra right wingers from America who went to Ukraine. Look it up, Rise Above movement. But you won't deal with why didn't they bust your team? Why won't they ever bust your team? Now you're assaulting people because they won't mask up. They don't trust the vaccines. They don't trust Fauci. You're assaulting people over this. You're assaulting people over what we now know as organ harvesting out of the for-profit end of the abortion industry. You won't deal with that at all. In no way, shape, or form will you actually, because you can't. You don't have experience. Many of you are from very messed up backgrounds. You take yourself too seriously, and you just don't get it. You don't get the bigger game going on. The scientific racists on Twitter, they fascinated me. When the whole alt-right thing started and everything, I was like, what is this? Who are these people? And I started to see where there were people who were kind of alt-right, flirting with it, but then there was like anarcho-syndicalists that they were like, no, 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 no. A lot of this sounds like scientific racism. These old head measuring things, physiognomy, where they would measure people's heads and stuff back in the day. Well, so I started really paying attention to what some of the smartest of these people were putting when they were putting facts and figures and studies, mostly about IQ and behavior and race and the genetics behind it. And there was good, real solid good work being done. I started to look into where are they getting this information? Where are these studies being done? That's when I started to find some very strange things. And I'm going to be putting this in the description. FDNA. And you look up FDNA, you look up genetics, you look up phenotype. You FDNA and genetics. First, you look up the site. I'll have it in the description, and then see if you could find it on Facebook, because you'll find a lot of this stuff is on Facebook in plain sight. Wuji AppTech. Wuji I think it's biogenics. Let me make sure I got that absolutely correct. Let me absolutely right now. I'm sorry, Wuji Biologics. Another was Face 2 Gene. This is one of the most important, and this is where this is going to apply to a lot of you. You know how when you take a picture with your phone, it could figure out that that's your face? That's computer, that's deep learning. A lot of you have probably heard of that. Remember how people were saying that TikTok, that China was stealing information on people? And then there was even stories about how TikTok is kind of messing up kids' minds. Face 2 gene. You're going to start finding information on physiognometrics. So physiognomy, so supposedly the pseudoscience, but measuring physiognomy. Because the scientific racists were correct. A lot about your face and what your obvious genetic inheritance, how you speak, the muscles around your eyes, around your mouth, around your nose, and how when you do things it shows. This data can be tracked and broken down by deep learning. You're going to find that when you look any of these up, which I don't think most of you will, I think most of you will laugh this off as, oh, this stupid old skinhead, what does he know? This dumbass old punk rocker, he doesn't know anything. He was probably from some rich suburb, No. I was born and raised in San Francisco. I lived Page and Webster, I lived in the Tenderloin. I'm a real San Francisco head. I remember before San Francisco was really cool, how cool it was. I remember introducing all my hip-hop friends to this band that had just put out the album Recipe for Hate. And when they were on that tour, there was this group of gutter punks from California. They were dressed totally gutter. I remember Billy Joe had 3 green dreadlocks, and they were called Green Day. Their albums were all on cassette. There wasn't even CDs back in those days. You had to play it on cassette, and only recently had they put out all of their albums on one CD. You can't even really find this. You have to really know what to look for. I think it's 10,000 Slap Happy Hours is what it's called. Fantastic compilation of their early work. So, when I started looking all this up, I started to find out that's probably what's being done. Somebody is monitoring all of your encrypted communications. They're looking at your photos. You guys post photos of your face and how I bash the fash, and they're analyzing the language you use. Many of you don't use Excel very likely, but if you use Excel, one of the things that you could use with Excel is Azure. So you could post in an Excel spreadsheet, say if you're tracking a company's profit and loss statements or something like that, you can post in there what somebody has written in a newspaper about that company, and Azure Deep Learning will analyze the language to see if this is a positive or negative comment. That's also one of the things that's being done with Twitter. Hence the bots that everyone talks about, and they're slowly learning how to use language and manipulate language and stuff like that. That's why there's all these fundamentally these fake people that it's turning out from. There's a few people on YouTube who really know about this, that China is using this so it looks like it's some normal white journalist, some typist somewhere, when actually it's a Chinese bot, and that they can use many Western languages. It's just that a lot of this, because of people trying to massage the language, sometimes it doesn't come across correctly, and that there's this endless number of these now. And even you've probably even seen how right-wingers will post a whole bunch of Twitter images, and it's all the same comment from a bunch of people who are white, or or assortment of really Americans or Westerners. And there are these bots that are especially going after those Trump people and the right-wingers and stuff. See, what it is, how is it the DOJ and the FBI just can't catch you? You're just too slippery. You're just too smart for them. Or is there actually actively sort of this plan to let you do whatever you want for a while? But why? Well, when you look up these genetics firms, you're going to find out that what they require is they require the actual genetic material of people. Say, a swab from inside their throat or nose or mouth. And what do you do? What test do you do to run those genetics? You use a PCR test. See, if you're trying to find a virus, and whether people were infected by a virus or something like that, you run a blood test to see if they have white blood cells, and you have to culture it. And that takes typically about a week and a half. But a PCR test, that can be done by a small device connected to a laptop right now. Look it up. You can have a CRISPR plugged into your laptop. I've told really smart people about this, smart Democrats, smart white liberals, smart progressives. Nobody will look any of this up. Nobody can put this together. But the guy who's just some sandwich maker, some dishwasher, some normal schlub, I've looked all this up. I'm even going to leave you a little tiny crumb so that you could find where I've archived all of this stuff. So the whole point is to get information from your face, couple it with genetics, so they could put all of this together. You act like this, you talk like this. When you talk, this is what's happening on your face, which means that can be connected to your brain. And remember, computers can pick up if you're lying or not now. We have lots of data on this. This is really smart people are working on this. And remember, those people have moved away from you. They've moved away. They've left where you are, and you're destroying things, and they've gone to places that, like Texas or Florida. They've gone to all these other places where smart people won't be bothered by people like you. So you've even caused where you live to be divested in and to become kind of a shanty or a ghetto. So, and remember, even you guys know, you fear that what's eventually going to happen is a company like BlackRock is going to buy everything up once it's dirt cheap. Because BlackRock isn't buying a whole lot of houses now. REITs are not buying a lot of houses now. The SEC findings on this, they have numbers on this. Most of these giant firms own not even 5% of American homes. No. These are being bought by mom and pop landlords. And then we don't really look to see these various investment groups that are actually international investment groups. We're just talking about ones that are in the United States. No, China and Canada are the two biggest buyers of American homes. When you look at, like, actually you compare everybody, they're the ones, they're through other firms, through small firms, they're the ones who are cleaning up. So that means even your rent is leaving the United States. It's not even going to somebody in the United States, so then the money might be used here. Wuji AppTech is the one that I found most interesting. But how did I find any of this? I found this by looking up Microsoft M12 Ventures, this venture capital project run by Microsoft. And when I did the search for who was the head of all that, it was a former man from Qualcomm. Now, some of you, you have to have a real brain. You have to really know your stuff about fascism. That Qualcomm is the front group for the CIA, for the Pentagon. It is truly the international, mega state, ultra state meets government, meets corporation kind of thing that none of you can fight. None of you will ever fight it. You'll never protest them. You'll never try to do anything about them, because that's not, you can't. You can't. You're not able to. You don't have what it takes in these two places. What they're doing is they're logging genetics. This is why when you see in China that they're like, oh, they got to test everybody, but nobody's being separated. Nobody's being separated and done in like groups. They're not being secured, like, okay, well, we don't want any virus spreading, and they just swab and swab and swab and swab. Gattaca. That's what's happening right now. Gattaca. None of you want to deal with the fact that they're just kind of slowly erasing the Tibetans. They're slowly erasing the Uyghurs. None of you will deal with that, because you can't. These two places, you can't do it. You'll never protest the Chinese government. That's not what, you're not made of that. You know that the police won't bust you for assaulting normal people who are your own countrymen. So you'll just do what's easy, because it's fun. It's fun when you're allowed to do whatever you like and beat people up, and you know that. You know that that's what that's really what you go. It's easy. It's easy to do that. So this is basically an effort to take information, the ultimate intellectual property, the essence of people, their absolute genetic information. What for? Well, the World Economic Forum openly said the future of humanity is genetic engineering. That they'll genetically engineer people to a purpose in life, so that people won't have to have like a job like a dishwasher. They'll be creative. That they'll be able to do all these things and all this stuff. It'll be amazing. It's the super future. And you all are going for it. You all are the enforcers of this. You'll beat up normal people because you swear this is about women's rights to abortion. You won't deal with the fact that what we know is that they are harvesting specifically. This was specifically named in their own information. This is the information from these clinics, that they're looking for gonadozoidal cells, so the cells of gonads. Because we have to study spermatozoa while it's forming. Before, because men are men, women are women, we have to study spermatozoa early before it matures, so as to find out how to engineer spermatozoa. Or if you were thinking like a supervillain, that's what it would be. so that you can make tall people, handsome people, mentally stable people, or maybe mentally compliant people. Why in China are they locking people into their homes and starving them so as to solve the problem of the coronavirus? That in places like the Dakotas or Florida or Texas, they have to invent that there's horrible numbers of people getting the virus, and then they have to readjust those numbers quietly, so that really you end up finding out that they were off by 30, 50, 60% at times, and that there's not people being hospitalized. They're not saying hospitalization, they're not saying death, they're saying just infection through PCR tests that have already been admitted to not be effective for that. And then that's not what, you don't use PCR tests for that. You use PCR tests to test people's genetics. But you're too smart. You're just, and nothing proves how smart you are, because you see, you can't prove anything. You can't actually make an argument. You just beat people into submission, because that's how you prove that you are far superior to other people, is by using violence, by using real violence, not using word violence, by using real violence. Because apparently you're stopping the violence that supposedly all these people on the right wing, so people who by the millions, by the hundreds of thousands to the millions, are moving away from where you all are allowed to cause chaos, abandoning those cities, so that at some point someone's going to buy up all of that property, and then there'll be a breakthrough case by the FBI and DOJ of finding all of you. You'll be old. You'll be in your 30s, you'll be in your 40s by that time that comes. But they'll know who you were. Or is it even worse than that? At some point are you going to just be quietly told, like, we know who you are and now you're going to do what we want because of your history of violence? Or that you just magically won't be included in the economy in some way, shape, or form after some great reset, which you guys apparently don't care about. You won't protest that. You don't care about some great reset, that this might be the final merger of corporation and state, internationally and globally. You won't deal with it because you don't have what it takes to deal with that. That's my contention. Unless maybe some of you one day look any of this up and start actually protesting that it seems like the government has some department that's not elected, that's just some random department that's supposed to be keeping people healthy, collecting a genetic library on you. But is it the government flu? Is it Jello Biafra's Trust Your Mechanic? Is one of your comrades the guy in the song I Am the Owl by Dead Kennedys? But you see, that would take you actually being the real thing, being real punk rockers, actually knowing something about the history of the real counterculture. And that's not what you are. That's not what you are. That's my contention. I'll give you plenty of opportunity in the description to prove me wrong.